Okay, welcome back to the room. I believe it's cooler than before, but some of us will continue to sweat during this second session. So thank you very much for being here again, and we will start with the fourth and the fifth conference. First of all, I will introduce Marisa de Andrade, who will be from Sterling Management School in the University of Sterling. It's a quite new university in, perhaps 20 years or, you don't know, wow. In any case, but they have a nice group working together on tobacco control and working together with other units in the UK, forming the Tobacco Control Research Center. Very active in several aspects of tobacco control. And Marisa, who has a PhD in public health, will be speaking about the marketing of electronic cigarettes and the interests of the tobacco industry. After her, we will have Francisco Rodriguez from the National Committee for Smoking Prevention, the Spanish National Committee for Smoking Prevention. He is the president. Hi, Mr. President. And he also serves in the board of the European Network for Smoking and Tobacco Prevention, European network based in Brussels with affiliates from several countries across Europe. And he's a physician with specialized in dentistry and has been working in tobacco control for many, many years. And now from these positions he has been lobbying and acting in the debates of several, first in the debates of the Spanish tobacco control law, and also he has been lobbying with Spanish members of Parliament, of the European Parliament, related to the Tobacco Products Directive. And he will explain these experiences and which is the way we have done in legislating all this stuff. And he will be presenting electronic cigarettes in the European Union Tobacco Product Directive. And after the two conferences, Martina will moderate the questions and the debate concerning both presentations. Thank you very much. It's your turn. Marisa, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much for having me this afternoon, especially on a Friday afternoon when it's very hot and everyone wants to go to the beach. And thank you very much to the organizers for asking me to come and present here this afternoon. English is my first language. I'm Portuguese. My Spanish isn't great. I'll speak in English, and I normally speak really fast, so I'm going to do my best to slow down today. So let me know if I'm running away. Okay, so just to carry on with what Esteve was saying, I'm based at the University of Stirling. We're in something called the Institute for Social Marketing, okay, which is part of the UK Centre for Tobacco and Alcohol Studies. And I work under Jared Hastings, Professor Jared Hastings. You may have heard of him. He's got an OBE. He works in marketing and business. And the interesting part of my job, my PhD was in public health policy and pharmaceutical regulation. But the interesting part of my job has been being in a business school and starting to understand things a little bit more from the perspective of a marketing and business strategist. So really today what I'd like to do is take you through some of the thoughts behind what would really happen if we were working for the tobacco industry, okay, and taking the perspective of the tobacco industry. So with that in mind, at the back of your head, these are the kind of things I want you to think about before I start, okay? So tobacco companies have now become heavily involved in the e-cigarette business, all right? Every single company, as Simon Chapman said this morning, is now heavily, heavily invested. As corporations, their sole interest is shareholder value, okay? So they, the tobacco companies, will therefore they have to use e-cigarettes to maximize this. So the question is, will this harm or will this help public health? And that is really the question that we have and the dilemma that we're faced with at the moment. So that's who I work with. Jared and Catherine, they're obviously not here, but thank you very much to them who worked on some of this research with myself. I'm going to be presenting some of the marketing benefits of e-cigarettes from the tobacco industry perspective. And I'll start off by outlining the research that we've done on this, which was an audit of e-cigarette marketing, particularly, and then move on to the tobacco business and how there's been lots of problems for the tobacco business in the past because of the exceptional work that everybody here in the tobacco control and public health community has been doing. Then how e-cigarettes, the business of e-cigarettes, creates some solutions, possibly, and ending off with some conclusions. All right, so let's kick things off. In about 2012, we were starting to think about what might happen if the tobacco industry got involved in harm reduction. So we published this piece in the British Medical Journal, in the BMJ, where we speculated. It was a conceptual piece. We thought about what might happen, what challenges there might be for public health if the tobacco companies started buying into this market. And we outlined all of this, also the pharmaceutical industry, but also, most importantly, the tobacco industry. And we put forward some key potential challenges for all of us sitting here today. We didn't know what was going to happen, but many of the things that we outlined here are starting to happen at the moment. And the second thing we did from there is move on to actually conduct some empirical research funded by Cancer Research UK in the UK. And the one thing we did was outline their policy priorities in terms of research and policy direction. So where are we going to go? So we mapped out all of the unanswered questions for Cancer Research UK. We set out their research agenda. And in tobacco control, we called for a unified research agenda. So bringing together the tobacco control community, which is very divided for the first time in decades. So that's what we set out to do. We kind of came up with a fancy word called a taxonomy of research questions, just a list of questions, which are divided into 4 different spheres, if you like. There were more unanswered questions than there were actually answered questions, and still, many of them are unanswered, okay? And they focused around 4 key areas: the individual level, all right, which is something, again, that Simon was talking about this morning, things about if a single smoker quits, what about long-term use, what about uptake? Tobacco control issues as well. So here, what about blurring the message of complete cessation and renormalization? What about Article 5.3 of the FCTC? Those kind of questions. Then we looked at the broader political dimensions. And in this, we considered things like corporate social responsibility, CSR. How does that fit into e-cigarettes? Also, whether or not the tobacco industry may be rehabilitated as a result of this. And then finally, philosophical questions. So big philosophical questions, which centered around addiction, okay? And whether our job in public health is, to encourage an addiction or discourage an addiction, empowerment, inequalities, and some of those key areas, okay? So these were the 4 areas of research that we outlined in our taxonomy. When we look back, we saw that there were many of these issues linked back to what the tobacco industry is actually doing, okay? So we realized it was very, very important to get the tobacco industry perspective, okay? In the past, we didn't know what they were up to. Now we recognize the need to continuously monitor what industry is doing. So our first piece of research, well, second piece of research, was the first systematic audit of e-cigarette marketing in the UK. All right, so we conducted it from over a year, it's 13 months, and we looked at traditional media, so newspapers, magazines. We also did a social media analysis, something called netnography. We looked at 7 different social media platforms, so everything from Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram. We did a thematic analysis of all of this, all the messages on these platforms. for 7 leading brands in the UK. And we coded them all using in vivo. And because we wanted to know what the tobacco industry was up to, we also had a look at company press releases, news wires, and tobacco industry trade press. So we're looking at tobacco industry, documents to find out what their strategy is. And then we published this. So in the last piece that we published in the BMJ, we put forward the question, which we'll be discussing afterwards, whether the promotion of electronic cigarettes is tobacco marketing reinvented. So thanks very much to all the people here who have continued to send us information and marketing messages and advertisements from all over the world. And we continue to use them to find out what the tobacco industry is doing. So here, I would like you to think now about the tobacco business, okay? And the work that as a tobacco control community you have been doing for decades, really. And back in 1954, the problem started for the tobacco industry because it insisted that the products it was promoting were safe. And we all know that we had a lot of big battle on our hands, and we did very well. We came up as a tobacco control community, working in public health, with multi-strand public health policies. They followed, and they followed thick and fast. And we know that it stifled tobacco industry marketing. The marketing slowed down to consumers because there were restrictions on constituents, on products, on price. There was tax, place, points of sale, and also promotion, especially the image of smoking, all right? And also the marketing, tobacco industry marketing to stakeholders was stifled. So we had Article 5.3, World Health Organization, FCTC, one of the best tools that we have in tobacco, and also reputational damage for an industry that lied to its consumers. So, prevalence rates tumbled in tobacco control countries, and they were set to follow elsewhere in the world because of FCTC, because of all these measures that were in place. And increasing margins were only delaying the inevitable, okay? They were big problems for the tobacco business. And the 3 key threats that the industry had, or has, is youth recruitment, adult retention, and then reputational harm. All right, so let's think about those 3, okay? Starting off with the first one, young people. This became the tobacco industry's greatest weakness, and the reason for this is we know that young people are absolutely vital to the tobacco industry. Without young people starting to smoke, the industry cannot survive, it cannot flourish. Children start smoking. This is not an adult choice. But we know that marketing a product that kills 1 in 2 when used as intended, marketing them to kids is indefensible. You can't do that. So, evidence that this kind of marketing is actually happening, whether it's intentional or not, justifies these very, very tight marketing controls that we have on the market. And these have been very, very, very severe. Okay, very severe. Specifically in countries like the UK, there has been very little room for maneuver. Okay, the tobacco industry has been in a corner. Second thing is adult quitting. This is the second problem for industry. And here, once again, because of the work of the tobacco control community, it's had increasing pressure for smokers to quit. Tax, graphic health warnings, packs, plain packaging, mass media campaigns. These measures work. We know that they work. We've seen prevalence fall. Simon Chapman this morning saying, again in Australia, dropped again. So these measures work. And these marketing responses were absolutely crippled. We had ad bans, we had points of sale, bans of points of sale. In the UK now, you cannot sell cigarettes at your point of sale, okay? Even the brand itself became under siege. These measures work. So, the third problem for the tobacco industry is that of reputational damage. And this is a very, very big one. Because all is lost for industry if it loses its reputation. Incredibly important. Recruitment goes, so in other words, young people don't start smoking again. Your stakeholder marketing. Do you know what I mean by stakeholder marketing? Yeah, marketing to policymakers, directing your efforts at policymakers, influence, investment, all of that goes. And even in the business community, the tobacco industry became a pariah. It became the bad guy, right? So really we had big problems for the tobacco industry until e-cigarettes came along. Now, here's where we start seeing some potential solutions. So I'm going to spend the rest of this talking about how e-cigarettes have changed the landscape. First problem, young people. Once again, the tobacco industry is marketing. Okay, we know that they are. In the Business Week, a quote for tobacco companies that have been barred from the airwaves for years: e-cigarettes are a way back in. They're on television, they're on radio. Product placement in music videos, sponsorship of every single sport, okay, that you can imagine. Racing car, celebrities endorsements, social media, and nicotine has been rehabilitated, okay? Nicotine has had a makeover. The tobacco industry now can justifiably pull young people back into the market because of this. It's a hip lifestyle choice for consumers, just like the good old days. And these are the messages we saw when we started doing this. So this is how the tobacco industry sees e-cigarettes as a solution, bearing in mind this came from our research. This is a quote from a tobacco company when it bought an e-cigarette brand, saying that we will see diverse competing strategies at these brands to explore the best ways to connect with consumers, focusing on passion points, stretching from sport to fashion. Our program plays to a real sweet spot, landing the brand in music, among influencers, and through partnerships. So the focus is not on the product, it's on the lifestyle. Music, fashion, sport. Here's another one, not just tobacco industry, okay? Also independent e-cigarette companies. Here's one for another brand. This brand is for another e-cigarette, one that actually uses legalized marijuana. Its delivery mechanism is to put legalized cannabis. And also another brand doesn't have any nicotine. It only has flavors and vitamins, it says. BAM, this is, if you don't know who BAM is, he's a skateboarder, he's a stuntman, he's an actor, he's a musician, he's a TV and a radio personality, and now he's the brand ambassador for this particular brand. Okay, so a quote, the CEO of this company says that he's perfect because he appeals to the millennial demographic that drive viral adoption. So we're excited to see what type of an impact BAM's association will have on the continued adoption of these brands. At last count, BAM had over 3.6 million Facebook followers and nearly 1 million Twitter followers, making him one of the most widely followed celebrities in social media. Brand association, okay? You get someone to represent your brand. So this is the kind of thing that's happening. This is how they're seeing it, and this is how they're presenting the solution. Accessories. E-cigarettes are coming in different various accessories. They're cool. All over Facebook. Again, just like you used to see with your motocross racing, your motorcar racing. This was a music video with product placements for Lily Allen. And of course, advertising on bikinis, because that's where it's at. This I'd like to point out, this is Vype, which is British American Tobacco's e-cigarette. This is a children's app, phone app. This caused a bit of a stir in the UK when it popped up. BAT apologized. They said that it was not them. So we're not accusing them of doing anything. But it just shows that there are wider issues of appropriate targeting of ads within children's apps, right? So this is the kind of thing which is very difficult to monitor. How do we monitor this? Second one, adult quitting. The tobacco industry is obfuscating again. Okay, so do you know what I mean by that? It's muddying the water, it's confusing things a bit. Things are a bit more complicated now because by using e-cigarettes, smokers are quitting, but they're still buying, okay? They're dueling, so they're using both cigarettes and e-cigarettes, which is causing many challenges to smoke-free legislation, amongst other things. And also their marketing, especially again at points of sale. You go now, you can't see cigarettes, but you can see normal electronic cigarettes. And of course, they're still using nicotine, a very highly addictive product, and imitating the real thing. So there have been arguments about whether or not it models smoking, but we all know that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. And again, in terms of adult retention, this is how the tobacco industry and independent companies see e-cigarettes as a solution. Again, this is a quote from a tobacco company when it bought over an e-cigarette. This is their creative agency that was hired to do the marketing for them. Our previous strategy was more focused on offering smokers a way to move away from smoking tobacco, but enjoy the same pleasure. Now we're moving towards offering smokers a positive lifestyle choice and not simply an alternative to smoking. Okay? So it's changed. Shareholder value by making the brand one of the leading choices. So very much this is part of a business strategy to change how these smokers view e-cigarettes as a possible solution. And this is how the tobacco industry and independent companies are presenting the solution for adult retention in marketing materials. This is the kind of thing that we're seeing. The last one causing quite a few problems. Because smoke-free legislation, obviously, now this is a big question. What do we do? Finally, reputational harm. So how might this create solutions towards stakeholders? So what we have here, as one CEO for a tobacco company said after acquiring an e-cigarette brand, it now gives this company a meaningful seat at the table in the harm reduction debate. And we intend to provide responsible leadership to this emerging category. Now, for the first time in a very long time, the tobacco industry is right there in policy-making circles again. All right there alongside the pharmaceutical industry, right there alongside academics and charities, the tobacco control community. All right? So here we see stakeholder marketing at its best. In the UK, British American Tobacco, which also has a product Vipe, the one that I showed you in the Kids app, has a product under review at our health regulator, okay? So very soon, we believe in the UK, the first e-cigarette company or brand that is going to be licensed as a pharmaceutical product, in other words, as a medicine, is going to be owned by the tobacco industry. That is a reality, okay? We don't know when it's going to happen. Admittedly, there's no guarantee, but we believe that it'll happen soon. So these are interesting times. One tobacco analyst said in a journal or in a tobacco trade press article that this gives them the chance to move from curse to cure, to sanitize their brand, to become the good guys again. And what we're also seeing is this risk spectrum. Now, this also comes from the tobacco industry documents. What you're seeing here is very high toxic, traditional conventional cigarettes, normal cigarettes, all the way through the spectrum down to low nicotine products where e-cigarettes would probably sit. And this risk spectrum means that we're shifting the guilt. Okay, so we offer the consumer the choice. By giving the consumer the choice, that means that we have dangerous products on the market, we have less dangerous products on the market. It is up to you, as a consumer, to decide. So that shifts the responsibility away from industry, also towards back to the consumer. So you're shifting the guilt and you're shifting the responsibility. Some of the interesting things that we're seeing about reputational harm to customers is how the industry is using, well, basically this has been used to rehabilitate the tobacco industry's core product, which is nicotine. Here, again, this came from a tobacco industry document. It says, are there any benefits of using nicotine? And in that there, it says, some evidence indicates there may also be some longer-term benefits, such as increased metabolism, which may play a role in weight control, and potential protective effects against some neurodegenerative diseases. Okay? So this is the language that the tobacco industry is using about nicotine. Nicotine explained, again, according to one company. Are there any benefits? Well, yes, it's reported to help both relax and stimulate. What else? Again, tobacco industry says nicotine can have benefits, particularly for mood and for concentration. What else? Oh, it's just as good as a cup of coffee. So that's what industry is also saying. Okay? These, again, come from industry documents. All right? So the kind of thing you're hearing public health professionals say, the tobacco industry is saying too. So we have the opportunity here for the tobacco industry to create a legitimized market in recreational nicotine with varying levels of risk. And it's happening. It's happening. It's out there. It's all over. We can't actually deny this. We've seen the marketing. We've seen the facts. We've seen the evidence. So this is how far we are. And as Simon said this morning, we now, for the first time in decades, have a very split, tobacco control community, where some are for, some are against. The tobacco industry is notorious for, divide and conquer. You split everyone, and in the midst of all of that, we can go in and we can create a solution. This reminds me back of 1954, of where it all began. So, finishing off, I want to leave you with a few thoughts. We are, to some extent, trying to tell the future. Okay? You'll see now that the debates are starting to become a bit more cautious and optimistic because we don't have the evidence. We don't have longitudinal data. We don't know if there's going to be renormalization. We don't know if it's a gateway. We don't know if children are using it. Okay? So to some extent, we don't really know. But the work that we have done is research-based. Okay? It is driven by evidence. These are the messages that are out there. This is what's happening. This is what is actually going on at the moment. And we know this by looking at the marketing, by looking at the industry press, by having interviews with marketing experts, and with help from tobacco control colleagues. All right? These are the realities of the situation today. But still, we don't know where this is going to end. And this is where it becomes really important now to try and answer some of the questions that remain. Is the tobacco industry good or bad for public health? And in their hands, are e-cigarettes a threat or an opportunity? And I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.